saw the signs. He tried to warn us. Now, in our darkest hour, he's got a plan to save us all.
Run! The sky is falling! The sky! Take cover!
When it comes to saving the world, it helps to be a little chicken.
What's that noise? Sorry. Nervous eater.
Chicken Little.
Son, there's something I want you to know.
What, Dad?
In about 3 seconds, I'm going to scream like a little girl.
So yeah, when Home on the Range was a financial and critical failure, it was kind of part of the final nail of the coffin at the time for Disney's long-running animation department. Home on the Range failing was kind of the equivalent of the Black Cauldron failing back in the 80s, except Home on the Range wasn't beaten by the Care Bears movie. It was just beaten because it was just not a good movie, and people weren't going to see 2D animated movies anymore, and it's the darkest day in Disney history. I mean, that still holds up. I mean, when you're losing to the Care Bears, a big movie like The Black Cauldron should not be losing to the Care Bears, and it did that, and yeah, it made Disney wake up back then to get their asses back on track, and so we got that second renaissance. Yeah, Home on the Range was, Home on the Range was kind of like that for Disney in general. Much like what happened back in the 80s, Disney would eventually make a comeback in the world of animation, but it took a few stumbles to get there. And like I said, in 2005, Disney was not only facing the reality of a dwindling 2D animation film swing, but they were on the cusp of losing one of their biggest acquisitions in Pixar. Because of continuing disagreements with Steve Jobs and then head Michael Eisner, Pixar was really that close to leaving Disney for another studio. And Disney was preparing itself for a future without Pixar as it was trying to save its own animation studio. So that's what this movie was going to be, the ultimate deciding factor of whether or not Disney could make it on their own or if they needed Pixar. And at first you couldn't really tell, really, when you think about it, because while this was a financial hit, it was not a successful, critically acclaimed film in general. So let's just go ahead and dive into it here. I mean, you have Disney's second adaptation of The Fable, which was actually they actually did it before this with a 1940s cartoon made during World War II. It's actually Disney's first fully computer animated feature, and Dinosaur was a combination of both live action and animation with 2000. But the one thing the movie has going for it, an impressive voice cast. Zach Braff, Joan Cusack, Steve Zahn, Gary Marshall, Wallace Shawn, Don Knotts, Fred Willard, Catherine O'Hara, Amy Sedaris, Patrick Stewart, Patrick Warburton. You also have the director of The Emperor's New Groove, Mark Dindal, who usually is a reliable director, and it seems like they were heading in the right direction. So how does the film actually end up working? Not really well at all. I mean, it's pretty much the story of Chicken Little, where you have Chicken Little, he's lambasted by the town because he thought the sky was falling, and it was simply an acorn falling on him. And he's trying everything he can to become popular, even trying to become a hero on the baseball field, which he does. But then when a piece of the sky literally falls to the ground, he has to decide whether or not to tell people something something was falling from the sky, or what, or just go back to being a pariah again. And it's an interesting concept. It's an interesting idea in general here, but yeah, let's talk about all the problems with the movie, because there are a lot of problems here. For one thing, the animation is really clunky in this movie, and shockingly really choppy too. There are so many moments in this movie where the animation looks terrible, and this is Disney. This is not one of their acquiring studios. This isn't the same company that made Vanguard. This isn't Vanguard who made Valiant, that's what I'm trying to say. This isn't the company that made The Wild. No, this is straight up from Disney. And this is really the best they could do here. And second, yeah, there's a great voice cast here doing a decent enough job here, but a lot of the choices they make in terms of who they got seem really, really strange. It feels like they got all these names in here because their brand recognition names, and not because they apply solely to the characters they're playing, which is what they used to do with a lot of the movies they made back in the 80s and 90s. I mean, they didn't just grab the genie because of it's because Robin Williams was just a name recognition. Robin Williams made the genie his own character, and it made him a memorable character in the process. I mean, they didn't just get guys like James Woods to play Hades just to be James Woods. Like, they got him to play a unique personality to them. It's why they got people like Eddie Murphy. It's from Mulan. It's why they got people like Nathan Lane and Ernie Sabella to play Timon and Pumbaa. They make these characters, all these different voice actors they've had in these movies, they make these characters their own. And that's what makes them so memorable. But here, it just feels like they're just throwing names at the wall, just telling them to be these characters, and then let's move on from there. Third, the comedy and the way they use the references in here are just terrible. I mean, there's way too many references to different pop culture things that don't add anything to the story itself, and it's just there solely on the notion to get people to go like Captain America and the Avengers. I understood that reference. Like, there's references to King Kong, War of the Worlds, South Park, Spice Girls, Indiana Jones, Queen. There's even a reference to Girls Gone Wild in a Disney movie, a Disney animated movie from the canon that also has Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella. Like, I mean, I don't know what went wrong here, but the biggest problem with the movie is that the story is about as lame as predictable as you can get. You can pinpoint every single plot cliche and twist these type of stories have, and there's absolutely no creative spark to anything in this whatsoever. Like, the whole movie is just so... Like, you hate most of these characters here. You especially hate Chicken Little's father, who just turns his back on his son way too many times in this movie. And it's just like, this is one of the worst father-son relationships I've ever seen in an animated movie. There have been some bad ones. If this isn't high up on that list, then I don't know what is, because good lord, the way that the father turns on his son so quickly in this, and how the son just doesn't connect with his dad at all, like, you have to keep remembering that this is Disney. This is Disney's animation department, not a offshoot studio. Disney. That is completely botching this whole thing. And it's just like, even the ending is so sappy and corny and pointless. It's unbearable. Like, it's so bad. Another shitty animated movie that came out 10 years later, Home, did the exact same ending. And that movie was horrible too. And the biggest problem with the film is that it fails because it's not a Disney movie. It fails because this is Disney trying to copy what's popular at the time. And who's their biggest animation competitor in the 2000s? DreamWorks. The whole movie is set up like a DreamWorks movie, and not even a good DreamWorks movie. We're not talking about Shrek or Madagascar or Over the Hedge. We're talking about Shark Tale and Hope levels of copying. I mean, from the voice cast, from the obvious pop culture references, from the music, from the way the animation is portrayed. Like, this is about as blatant of a ripoff of a DreamWorks movie as you can get. And for Disney to do this, that's fucking pathetic, man. Like, there's absolutely no excuse for how bad this movie is. If there's any one positive thing that came out of this movie, it's simply this. Bob Iger took over Disney because of Michael Eisner leaving the company a couple months before this movie came out, which made it much easier for Disney to team up with not only Pixar again, but because Pixar creator John Lasseter got full creative control over the Disney Animation Studios. And we've seen since in the time he took over, that Disney was really putting some of their best stuff together, and it was kind of their third renaissance. I mean, you got great stuff like Bolt, Princess and the Frog, Winnie the Pooh, Frozen, Tangled, just Zootopia. A lot of great movies came from this period when John Lasseter was the head of Disney. And it's really funny because it really began just a couple months earlier, because I've talked about the story before, when Shanghai Disneyland opened up. They were at the opening of that, and Bob Iger, and he realized that the Pixar characters were getting more of an applause from the audiences than the regular classic Disney characters. And because of that, that was the main focus of getting those negotiations back on track. And not but a couple months later, Disney and Pixar came together and said, you know what, let's work together again. And so that's how John Lasseter got creative control over that. He started with Meet the Robinsons, which isn't a bad movie, but it's kind of that little bridge movie before we got to the really good stuff. But we'll delve into that when we get to that one in 2007. But like I said, when John Lasseter was the head of Disney, the films not only got better with better animation, but also have been incredibly successful and have become new classics. I mean, look at the status that films like Frozen, Tangled, Moana, Wreck-It Ralph, Princess and the Frog. Look at what they've done to Disney in the last 10 years. Like, they've created a new batch of classic characters for a new generation. So there's at least a consolation prize for this movie being so terrible, because if it wasn't for Chicken Little, we wouldn't have this right now. John Lasseter would have probably taken Pixar, and Steve Jobs probably would have taken Pixar to somebody else, probably Warner Brothers or somewhere else, but in general. But Chicken Little is just such a lame movie. It lacks the creativity. It lacks the great animation the studio has done. It lacks the humor. It lacks the character development. The heart is not there. It's a complete waste of time with no redeemable qualities to it whatsoever. It's a mess of a film, and the only thing that it was good that came out of it was that Disney and Pixar reconciled, and the rest is history. So you can thank Chicken Little for that, because, yeah, Home on the Range may have been the final nail in the coffin, but Chicken Little was the movie that said, we really need Pixar involved in here, because we can't keep doing this to ourselves. And, just why of all companies do you want to rip off DreamWorks? You're Disney. You're much better than this. So, yeah. Not much more to say about Chicken Little, as I've gone off on now for about 10 minutes on this movie. So, let's go ahead and get to a really good movie that came out this weekend, and I mean a really good movie. Sam Mendes, the director of American Beauty, with Jake Gyllenhaal and Jamie Foxx and Chris Cooper, giving us a great war film, and that is, of course, Jarhead.
We are now Operation Desert Storm.
We at war.
I love it out here. This is what I want.
We at war with terrorism.
It is an honor to fight
Racism.
against my parents.
I can hear their bombs and I'm afraid.
We at war without fail. God, show me the way, because the devil's trying to break me down.
Welcome to the South. Rated R. In theaters Friday, November 4th.
I absolutely love Jarhead. This is probably one of my favorite war movies of all time. Just a really good movie, man. You have a story that's based off of the memoir of the actor, the soldier who Jake Gyllenhaal plays in the movie, Anthony Swarford, and it chronicles his military service in the U.S. Marine Corps during the Persian Gulf War in 1989 and 1991. Also featuring Jamie Foxx, as I said, Peter Skarsgård, Lucius Black, Chris Cooper, Dennis Haysbert's also in here as well. Who else is in here? John Krasinski from The Office is in here too. A lot of good talent in this movie, and this is just such an incredible war film in general. I mean, this is why Sam Mendes is such a great director. He made two great movies before this, with American Beauty and Road to Perdition, and I'm looking at his filmography here. A lot of great movies to his name. I think the worst thing he's ever done was Spectre, and even then, that was bad because the movie just felt like it just felt like they were just trying way too hard to recapture the same magic that Skyfall had. I mean, this is a director who has been so pitch perfect for the most part. He made another great war movie with 1917 that came out 14 years later. This guy has two great war films to his record, and it's really hard not to see why, because the guy has such a beautiful visual feel for this movie in general. This is a movie that has some incredible war visuals and a really good storyline here with a strong cast. Jake Gyllenhaal, I think, really gets a chance to show everybody how great of a leading actor he could be here, because he really is fantastic in the film. Jamie Foxx with a great supporting role in this. This is definitely better than his other movie that he did this year, Stealth. But the story is really good. This is William Boyles Jr. who gave us Castaway, and it does a good job with handling the script. The music by Thomas Newman, the marketing campaign with the great Kanye West song "Jesus Walks," probably the best usage of a Kanye song in a marketing campaign ever. I mean, I don't think anything even comes close. Maybe No One Man Should Have All That Power from Limitless, but other than that, though, this is the crowning achievement. I mean, this is such an incredible movie, one of my favorite war movies of all time, one of the best movies of the year. Just a phenomenal film. I can't recommend this one enough. Definitely seek this one out, Jarhead.
Ordinary day, they found it. With a push of the button, they unleashed it. To get back home,
In outer space.
they must keep playing it.
Take your turn! I'm gonna win this thing and get us home. Yes.
Susura,
It's getting hot in here.
rated PG.
So like I said, this is sort of a sequel, but it's also kind of a spin-off of the Jumanji franchise. Like I said, it's based off the same book by the same author who made Jumanji, Chris Van Allsburg, who also did The Polar Express the year before. And in this movie, you have Josh Hutcherson and Jonah Bobo as two squabbling brothers, Danny and Walter Budwing, who find a mysterious board game in the basement which transports their house into outer space. Along with their older sister Lisa, played by Kristen Stewart, and an astronaut played by Dax Shepard, they try to survive the game so they can return home. Tim Robbins also plays their dad in this movie. I was not the biggest fan of the original Jumanji. I'm still not a fan of the original Jumanji, but this got better reviews than Jumanji did, but it was a box office disappointment overall. Most people did like it, though, and it's because of the fact that Jon Favreau directed. This is his first movie he directed after Elf. David Koepp is one of the screenwriters on here. He's written a lot of great movies, Spider-Man 2, for example, Schindler's List. So there are a lot of pieces working towards the film, and the movie is good. Is it a great movie? Not really. I mean, it is cool to see this house in space in HD because I watched this on Blu-ray for the first time, and yeah, it does look pretty nice. They do a pretty good job of putting this house in space and making space look as realistic as it can be in this situation here. Where the film kind of falls apart is with the overall story and the overall message of the movie, which feels very, very odd. And you know, Dax Shepard's character is supposed to play like a big part in like the big climax of the movie. Like there's supposed to be a big twist around him. When they get to that twist, it's just kind of like, I don't think that was a good twist and how that's supposed to and how you put that together. But the stuff that's going on before that, though, is very fun. There are a lot of fun visual ideas to the film. I mean, there are a lot of things I like about the movie in general. It's that third act where I think the movie really starts to slow down a bit. But overall, yeah, it's a good movie. Not a great movie, but I still like it better than the original Jumanji. And I don't think it's as good as the two Jumanji films that came after this, but it's a good movie. It's a good film that probably should have been a lot better, especially with that ending overall, but yeah, it's fine for what it is. It's another good Jon Favreau movie, but definitely not as good as some of his best movies in general. So, overall, yeah, I like it. Not one of his better films, though. So, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, which is Derailed. So in this movie, you have Clive Owen and Jennifer Aniston, who are having an extramarital affair and are assaulted and robbed by a man named Philippe LaRoche, played by Vincent Cassel, in a hotel room. When LaRoche threatens to kill Charles' family unless he pays him a ransom, Charles finds himself in the victim of the conspiracy. This is the first film produced officially by the Weinstein Company after their split with Disney and Miramax. And, you know, I'll give it this. For the first movie from their company, it's kind of interesting seeing Jennifer Aniston outside of the rom-coms that we're used to seeing her in. It's interesting to see her in a more serious role like this. But unfortunately, there's not a good movie there to really make it all worth it in the end. I mean, Clive Owen's character is already having an affair, which is already enough of a story as it is. But then they got to throw in this whole conspiracy thing here, and it's just kind of like it just gets really ridiculous very quickly. I mean, it doesn't even waste any time getting into the stupidity of itself in general here. Like, there's nothing about the movie that really is worth it in the long run. Like, it's just, like, it's a really stupid movie when it's all said and done. And like I said, I think there is a good movie here. There's good ideas, too. I like seeing Jennifer Aniston in something that's not a typical rom-com that we used to see her in. Like, she's doing something different. Unfortunately, the film is not really giving her a whole lot to do here. And it's just kind of like, why are we even here then if you're just going to keep throwing these little twists and turns here that aren't engaging whatsoever? It's a bland film. It's a movie that makes no sense. It's going all over the place. And for a movie like this, like, you expect a lot more from it. I mean, I honestly went into this looking for a lot more from it, but unfortunately, because they kept piling on so much stuff on there, it just got really boring really fast and really pathetic really quickly. So, yeah, so that's a hard skip on Derailed. But bottom line, not a great start for the Weinstein Companies trying to make it on their own. But their films will get better. I will assure you that. They will definitely get better from this point going forward. But a couple bumps and bruises there, first of all. But with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, which is 50 Cent making his theatrical debut with Get Rich or Die Trying.
You know a man. She out there making some money for me.
Before you judge a man,
You have a gift, dear Paulist.
look at the world. What you got in your head now? Through his eyes.
All kinds of images.
From director Jim Sheridan, Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, Terrence Howard, Joey Bryant.
Voice don't sound the same.
It's better. It's got more pain in it.
Get Rich or Die Trying. Rated R, November 9th.
Okay, first of all, why are you releasing this on a Wednesday in the middle of November? I mean, like, are there really people that are going to go to the movie theaters on a Wednesday and Thursday to go see this movie when you could have just put this out in theaters on Friday? I mean, this is one of those weird things that I never understood when they put these movies on a Wednesday. Like, you put movies like this on a Wednesday, so if you put movies on a Wednesday because it's either a big blockbuster or you feel like you can make more money on it if you open a couple days earlier. But there was no real demand for this movie to be put out on a Wednesday. You could have just put this out on a Friday, and it would have been fine. Second of all, I'm going to admit to something here. Back in the day when I did my review show for high school, I would make up some lies and say that, yeah, I saw a lot of movies that I didn't see. Not a lot, but some that I did reviews for, and this is definitely one of those ones where I stretched the truth a little bit here. I straight up lied, okay? I mean, yeah, I didn't see this movie when it first came out. I made a review up saying that I saw it, but you know, I didn't think anybody would really know this. And plus, I don't think that review's actually available anymore. I probably still have the script for it somewhere, but I did eventually see this movie not too long after it came out on video. So I did eventually see it, just not when it came out in theaters. So yeah, I kind of stretched the truth and basically lied on some of the movie reviews that I did back in the day. Not a lot of them, but a couple that I will bring up as we move along here. But let's get to the actual movie itself here. This is a film that contains autobiographical elements from 50 Cent's life following his character Marcus Greer, a drug dealer who turns away from his criminal life to pursue his passion of rap music. And the film shares the title of 50 Cent's 2003 album of the same name. This is essentially Paramount's answer to 8 Mile. I mean, it was literally used as a template for this particular film. And 8 Mile worked because you had a really good director in Curtis Hanson, and it showed that Eminem has a lot of potential as an actor in general. This almost gets it, almost works, but then it doesn't. Like, it's a movie that is off in a number of different places. I'll give it credit for this. 50 Cent, I think, can be a good actor. I think he shows it in this movie here. He's got a really good cast to work around with here. You got Terrence Howard, Joy Bryant, Bill Duke, Adwale Akinyi. I always get this name wrong. Adwale Akinyi Agbayi. I think I'm pronouncing that name right. But you got him, Omar Benson Miller, Viola Davis. There is a good cast to work with here. You got a really good director in Jim Sheridan, a good writer in Terrence Winter, who would later go on to create Boardwalk Empire, did work on The Sopranos, of course. But this is a movie that you could just feel that it's ripping off 8 Mile, and it's not even trying to hide it, and it really does hurt the film in the long run in general, because there are brief flashes of promise in here. The acting overall is good. The story is just basically a knockoff of 8 Mile. I mean, you could just tell this was Paramount's answer to make that movie again, and it just didn't work in the long run, and it's a shame, because the possibility was there for something good, but it just didn't really come together with this final product and overall. Like, I'm not going to say it's a bad movie, but it's definitely a missed opportunity on a number of different levels. The acting is good. The direction's fine for what it is. The script writing is decent, but you can just tell that they were just trying to knock off 8 Mile and not even trying to make it stand out on its own. And people, I think, easily saw it right away, because it was not a big hit when it came out. It made back its budget overall and did eventually gain the cult following, but nobody really remembers this movie except for just being a knockoff of 8 Mile, and not even a very good one. So, mixed bag review on that one, in my opinion, for a movie that I straight up lied to people about when I first saw it, when this came out, and then I did eventually see it, and yeah, I'll admit now, I don't think it really would have made much of a difference if I saw it or not, because it's pretty much what I thought it was going to be when I first saw the trailers for it back in the day. I mean, could be good, but it probably won't be. So, let's get to some actual good movies here. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one we have here, and that is Pride and Prejudice.
I cannot accept you.
Lizzie Bennet can think of 100 reasons not to get married.
He's so rich. He's ridiculous.
Headstrong, is she?
But one moment is enough
Yeah, the next dance.
to change everything.
Mr. Darcy.
from the producers of Bridget Jones's Diary.
What have you done to poor Mr. Darcy? I have no idea.
You must know. Surely you must know.
Comes Jane Austen's masterpiece, Pride and Prejudice.
So this is Joe Wright's directorial debut. Joe Wright is, of course, the director who would make such movies as Hannah. He would also do movies like Pan, Torment, which he also did with Keira Knightley. He's made a lot of mixed bag. He's made a lot of movies that are good, but then there are ones that are kind of lackluster in general. Like a criminally underrated one of his is The Soloist that we'll get to with Jamie Foxx and Robert Downey Jr. But then he does stuff like Pan, like I said, and The Woman in the Window. But then he does stuff like Cyrano, and then also Darkest Hour with Gary Oldman winning the Oscar for that movie. And you see that he definitely has that ebb and flow as a director as a whole, and he shows why with this movie here. This is, like I said, based off of Jane Austen's classic novel of the same name, featuring 5 sisters from an English family of landed gentry as they deal with the issues of marriage, morality, and misconceptions. Keira Knightley stars as Elizabeth Bennet, while Matthew McFadden plays Mr. Darcy, who falls in love with her. Matthew McFadden, of course, you know him from Succession, and more recently in Deadpool and Wolverine. But as far as an adaptation of this movie goes, it's a really good adaptation, and it definitely shows Keira Knightley's strength as an actress, and not just playing the same character from Pirates of the Caribbean. It does give her an opportunity to branch her character out in general, and it does a very good job of handling that role very well. It's a really solid film overall that does have a lot of great elements with the period piece setting. The music by Dario Malinelli is nicely done. Joe Wright's direction shows he's got a lot of potential as a director that we'll see later on down the road. It's a really, really good, well-made film. It's a film that is very entertaining. It does showcase a lot of great talent in the cast. It's a good adaptation of the story, and probably one of the better adaptations of the Jane Austen storyline in general. Yeah, not much more to say about this one, except it's a really damn good movie, and one definitely worth seeing. So, definitely check out Pride and Prejudice. So, with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, which is the stand-up comedy film Sarah Silverman, Jesus is Magic.
Wrote a show.
Oh, wow, cool. What's it about?
It's about Holocaust. Wow. Yeah, and AIDS. But it's funny.
She's adorable.
I have a long swan like neck.
Bubbly. And sweet. Until she opens her mouth.
Jesus is magic, because he turned water to wine, and I think he made the Statue of Liberty disappear in the 80s.
Well, let's just call it what this really is. This is basically the pilot for the Sarah Silverman show that was on Comedy Central in the 2000s. It's a really funny show, by the way. But as far as this movie goes, it's all right. This is a concert film consisting of 72 minutes of clips that Silverman did from her previous stand-up show of the same name, including flashbacks and comedic sketches. And you have her addressing a number of topical issues, including religion, AIDS, the Holocaust, race, sexism, political parties, people with disabilities, homeless people, dwarves. And of course, she's got to do some original songs in here. This was around the time she was known for doing the song "I'm Fucking Matt Damon" from Jimmy Kimmel Live. But overall, this is a really funny movie. It's a funny movie that works because of Sarah Silverman. I mean, I do think she's still a very funny comedian. I mean, she still is very funny even to this very day. This is a good stand-up film. It's a movie that definitely showcases what stand-up comedy really used to be, and probably still is in general. But you don't usually get to see a movie like this that is not afraid to just go all out and be as offensive as you can, because the world has clearly changed in the 20 years since this movie came out. But this is still a really damn good movie, a really funny film that shows why Sarah Silverman is so funny. Laura Silverman is also in here, Brian Posehn, Bob Odenkirk, a lot of really funny talent in this movie all the way through. And like I said, it's basically a precursor to the Sarah Silverman program. I mean, this is a movie that really does play up to Sarah Silverman's strengths overall, and it's just a really funny film. Definitely plays up to everything that makes her so funny. Is it one of the best stand-up movies ever? Not really. I think there's a lot better stand-up films in general, but if you like Sarah Silverman's comedy, this is definitely something I highly recommend checking out, because it is indeed Sarah Silverman doing what Sarah Silverman does best. So let's go ahead and move on to our last film that we have here, and that is Bee Season. And the Oscar goes to... certainly not this movie, that's for sure. Why not even do that? But yeah, can you tell that that's a movie that's literally trying to go for some Oscars right there? I mean, good lord, like, that should pretty much give you an indication of how I feel about this movie. But you have a wife and mother, Miriam, who begins a downward emotional spiral as her husband, played by Richard Gere, avoids their collapsing marriage by immersing himself in his 11-year-old daughter's quest to become a spelling bee champion. Yeah. As much as this movie has a good heart to it, it's literally a movie that's trying to go for some Oscars and kind of failing miserably at it. I mean, this is about as schmaltzy and as generic and as bland as you can get. This is a really lousy film in general here, and it doesn't help that not but a few months later, a far superior movie will open up called Akiva and the Bee, which is a far better movie that comes out in April of the next year in 2006, which is a much better movie in general, and was largely forgotten when it came out, but has eventually gone on to have a following, and it did lead to the leading star of that movie, Keke Palmer, becoming the superstar that she would eventually become. But yeah, as far as this movie is concerned, it's a bad movie. I mean, it's literally the literal definition of Oscar bait. Like, you have scenes in that trailer there, that's literally like, it's like that scene where Richard Gere is like happy crying. It's just like, you could just tell that scene was meant to be like, please give us Oscars. I mean, all we want is Oscars. That's all we want from this movie. And yeah, you can't just earn Oscars like that. I mean, you can, but that just goes to show you the problems of the Academy Awards, but that's a whole other topic of discussion altogether that we will have on another day and time. But yeah, this is not a very good movie. Like I said, it's not a good film. It's a pretty bad movie. It's a lame movie. I really didn't like it a lot, so yeah, a hard skip on B season, that's for sure.
Hogwarts will play host to a legendary event, the Tri-Wizard Tournament, during which time a single student gets to represent his or her school in a series of magical contests. Eternal glory awaits the student who wins the tournament.
Times lie ahead, Harry. Soon we must all face the choice between what's right and what is easy.
So yeah, this one's kind of an interesting movie in the Harry Potter series. In it, Harry's 4th year at Hogwarts, and in this one he's chosen by the Goblet of Fire to compete in the Tri-Wizard Tournament. But what's interesting about this movie in particular is that this was kind of the beginning of where the Harry Potter series was eventually going to go from this point forward, because this was the first PG-13 rated Harry Potter film, and it was a massive hit when it came out. It actually had the third highest first weekend tally for a Harry Potter movie in this altogether. I mean, this was the highest grossing one up until the Deathly Hallows Parts 1 and 2 came out, but that's obviously because those were the last 2 movies in the series. But what's interesting about this one to me is that this feels like the one that gets forgotten and pushed to the side, because after this you have Order of the Phoenix, and then you have the 2 Deathly Hallows movies, which are often seen as probably the best ones in the series in general, and then this one kind of gets pushed to the side a little bit, which is odd because this did get very high reviews. It was a very highly praised film. I think on Rotten Tomatoes it had like an 88% on there, which is very high up there with the highest rated of the series in general. So does it really seem forgotten overall? I don't want to say it is, but I feel like it kind of does, because nobody really ever talks about this one in general, but I actually really like this one a lot. I don't think it's as good as Prisoner of Azkaban. That I think is still the bar up to this point, but it's kind of somewhere in the middle. It's close to the middle. I mean, I would say that this is definitely better than Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets, but then again, those were specifically those were the first movies in the series, and that was when they were trying to hone their craft, and they were essentially kids' movies. Prisoner of Azkaban was when we started getting into darker territory, and this is the darkest we'll get to at this point in time before we get to the next series of films in general. But Goblet of Fire, actually, the book itself, I remember vividly when it first came out, because we had a media play right in the middle of this area where it's no longer there anymore in Monroeville. And I remember that was one of the first Harry Potter midnight release parties I ever went to get this book. And I never read any other books before, but I just knew that the books were very popular. And my sister was very much into them, so my dad, my sister, and I went out there at midnight on the day that Goblet of Fire came out in stores in book form. And we picked that up in general. And yeah, it was kind of an interesting experience overall. And I think that's the only one I've ever been to of the, whenever they do the Harry Potter book release parties, because they were pretty big whenever a new book came out. Like, there were a ton of people there for the books in general. And but yeah, as far as this movie goes, I think it's a really good movie. I think it's a really solid film. There's a lot of great elements to it. The characters are maturing, the storyline is maturing, and that's what I really like about it a lot. We get some cool introductions in here. Cedric Diggory is in here, played by Robert Pattinson, who, of course, will become later known for a much more well-known franchise, but not a better franchise in terms of quality in general. But he would appear in the Batman later, so it would all come together in the end. This movie definitely shows that Robert Pattinson was a very good actor, and it was just basically the Twilight movies were so terrible. That's why the actors in those movies felt like they were so terrible, but once you took them away from Twilight, they really got a chance to shine on what they can really do. Kristen Stewart's another great example, Anna Kendrick's another great example. The list goes on. And Robert Pattinson, when he's not making movies like Twilight, you see where the true acting ability would come into play, and we would see it later on down the road, especially with Tenet and the Batman as well. But here, this is a really good movie. It's really cool to see the tournament they have in here. The visuals are still really cool to look at. It doesn't have that grand scale and epic scale that the Prisoner of Azkaban was, but considering how big the story for Prisoner of Azkaban was at that point, this one I'm okay with it being a little more subdued than the previous film in general. But like I said, it's going to get more intense as we move along here, because we've got Order of the Phoenix, and then we have Deathly Hallows split up into 2 movies. But yeah, I really like this one a lot. Definitely one that I feel like is kind of the underrated little gem of the Harry Potter series. At least in my opinion it is. But I don't know. What do you guys think out there? Do you think I'm overthinking it too much? Or does this have more of a fan base than I'm led to believe? But overall, it's a really good movie. It's a Harry Potter movie. This is back when Harry Potter was still very much likable before the true author revealed her true colors. But that's for another day and time to discuss. But let's go ahead and move on to the other big new release of the holiday weekend, of the pre-holiday weekend, I should say. Joaquin Phoenix as the Man in Black himself, Johnny Cash. This is Walk the Line.
Was hit by a truck, and you were lying out in that gutter dying, and you had time to sing one song. One song that would let God know what you felt about your time here on earth. One song that would sum you up. That's the kind of song that truly saves people.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
How the hell did I lose out to Philip Seymour Hoffman for Best Actor? Yeah, that was kind of one of the more shocking things to come from the 2005 Oscars, except for the Best Picture winner. But everyone thought Joaquin Phoenix was kind of a lock to get the Oscar for Best Actor in here, because Jamie Foxx won the Oscar here last year for Ray, and this was basically Fox's answer to what happened with the success of Ray. But of course, Joaquin didn't win this Oscar for that movie, but he would eventually win it, of course, for Joker, and of course the Oscar that year went to Philip Seymour Hoffman and Capote, which I've talked about that movie beforehand. I talked about why that was why that was probably a better choice than Joaquin Phoenix. If you want to go check that out, I'll leave a link to that particular week where that review is in the corner there. But Walk the Line, this is the story about Johnny Cash's early life, his romance with the singer June Carter, played by Reese Witherspoon, his ascent in the country music scene, and his drug addiction. So, typical music biopic type of stuff, but James Mangold directed this movie, and this was really the turning point for James Mangold's career in general, because before this, he had made some really good movies. He made Copland, which I think is a great movie, Girl Interrupted. He hit a snag with something like Kate and Leopold, and then came back a little bit with Identity. But after this point, he was just hitting bullseyes right out of the park, man. I mean, he did 3:10 to Yuma, which is a great underrated Western remake. Night and Day, which I actually do think is a lot funner than most people give it credit for. The Wolverine, of course, Logan, Ford v Ferrari. I still like Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I don't care what anybody says. I'm never looking forward to see what he does with the Bob Dylan movie coming up, A Complete Unknown, which comes out later this holiday season. But looking pretty good there. But this was kind of his turning point where he just started turning out these gems one after another. And this is just an incredibly good film. It's a well-made film that works solely because of the performances that both Joaquin and especially Reese Witherspoon are given to this. I mean, Reese Witherspoon, there's a reason why she won Best Actress here, because she just really sells the movie. She is just so damn good as June Carter, and it's just like, you know, it's just hard to believe that this was the same woman that was in Legally Blonde a couple years ago, you know. Like, what a transition that is, to go from Legally Blonde 4 years later to winning your first Academy Award, and rightfully so, because it is a really, really damn good performance. And you also have some good performances. You have Vivian Liberto, I think I'm pronouncing it right, Vivian Liberto, who was Cash's first wife, played by Jennifer Goodwin. Of course, Jennifer Goodwin's been in a lot of really good stuff over the years. Robert Patrick playing Johnny Cash's father, giving me a really damn good performance that doesn't really get a whole lot of attention in general here. Yeah, the formula of the typical musical biopic is still there. I mean, this is pretty much the inspiration for why we got Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. I mean, it's literally almost that movie to a T, but still a really damn good movie when we'll get to that one in a couple of years' time. But as far as this movie goes, it's a good movie. It's a really good film. Definitely very formulaic in terms of the story of how you do these musical biopics in general, but you got a lot of good talent in front of the camera, behind the camera to make it work. And just like with Ray, if everything's working and on all cylinders, it just works to a T. I mean, it's a film that is just so, you know, so well done for what it is. I really like this one a lot. I can't recommend it enough. Even if you're not a big country music fan, you have to respect what Johnny Cash did back in the day and the music that he eventually brought to the table with his music in general. And it just really works very well here overall. I really like this one a lot, Walk the Line. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the last one we have here, and that is Neil Jordan's Breakfast on Pluto.
Fantastic.
2005 was definitely a risky year for a number of different movies. I mean, we haven't even gotten to the gay cowboy movie yet, but this is actually the first of two major movies centering around transgender leads that we're going to get into here. The other one I think was more successful, but I'll delve into that in just a second. But in this film, you have Cillian Murphy, like I said, in a radically different performance than his performance in Batman Begins or Red Eye, starring as a transgender woman foundling searching for love and her long-lost mother in small-town Ireland and London in the 1970s. In addition to Cillian Murphy, you have Stephen Ray, Brendan Gleeson, and Liam Neeson involved in the cast. And it's directed by Neil Jordan, who, of course, is not too far away from controversy in general, movies that get people talking. Of course, everyone knows about The Crying Game. Everyone knows about Interview with the Vampire, which was a big success. He hadn't really done anything of true noteworthiness since then, though. There's been a few movies here and there that got a little bit of attention overall, like Michael Collins was one of the big ones. In Dreams, which was more of a mainstream movie in general, but this was one of the last few films that he did that really got a lot of overall attention overall. But like I said, it's because of what the movie is about in general. And like I said, I think what really hurts the movie in the long run isn't even really the movie's fault, but the fact that a much better movie about a transgender person came out shortly after this, which was Transamerica with Felicity Huffman, which is, I think, a much better movie in general. But this isn't a bad movie either. This is a film that works mostly because of the performances. You know, Cillian Murphy giving a really solid performance in here, a good supporting cast with, talents like Brendan Gleeson, Liam Neeson, Stephen Ray. I mean, just really, really good talent overall in here. The story, not really all that impressive overall, and I think that really dinks the film a lot in the long run. But this is a movie that you watch for specifically for the performances. I think the performances really do stand out in here to make it worthy of watching in general. I think it's definitely one of Neil Jordan's stronger movies later in his career, but it's definitely not one of his better films in general. I think The Crying Game and Interview with a Vampire are much better films in general, but this, it's a good movie overall. Nothing I'd say is great in general, but yeah, just part of a really, really interesting time period in 2005 when these studios were taking big chances with movies like this. But yeah, this is one of those movies that was one of those examples. But not much more to say about this one. That is Breakfast on Pluto.
Cheerleader.
Right.
Hey, forget about it. He's cute, but totally shallow. Maybe he is your type.
And suddenly,
This is my crew.
These are my kids.
sisters.
No way.
This Thanksgiving, 2 families,
What are you doing? Webcast.
1 house,
Is that my shirt? Take it off.
no escape.
Why do I suddenly feel like I'm in prison? Bachelor place cut up with you?
Yours, mine, and ours. Rated PG. In theaters tomorrow.
Just watch the last one.
No 2 kids. 2 parents. And a kid. What? It's tomorrow. Get crazy. Take a break. Take a break. And go wild. Yours, mine, and ours.
This is fun.
Rated PG. Starts tomorrow. Only in theaters. Tomorrow, when the parents are away. 2 words, heart and team. The kids will play. Yours, mine, and ours. PG starts tomorrow. Only in theaters. Today, it's Sister versus Sister.
You are so dead.
They're going head-to-head in the ultimate sibling rivalry. This is gonna be good. Yours, mine, and ours. Now playing only in theaters.
So yeah, like I said, since Cheaper by the Dozen was such a big success for Fox, Paramount looked at this and said, "Well, shit, we gotta remake something of our own. So let's see what we have in our catalog here. Yours, mine, and ours. Okay, we'll take this, but yeah, why not remake the other family comedy with a family with multiple children in it? By the way, Cheaper by the Dozen 2 comes out the following month, so timing, I guess. But you'll notice Paramount, MGM, Nickelodeon, and Columbia Pictures, because remember, Columbia Pictures they didn't really buy MGM, but they were releasing their movies through their studio after MGM shut down as a major studio. So yeah, you had 4 different studios coming into form here, but also adding to the fact that between 2012 and 2016, Warner Brothers held most of the distribution rights to many of Paramount's catalog titles, and also that since 2013, Universal has had the international rights to Paramount catalog titles. So 6 different major studios have been on one movie. I was actually kind of surprised Disney didn't make their way into that category in there, but that's a lot of studios. I mean, it's like the Family Guy joke where Peter and Brian are in the theater and they're getting ready to watch the movie, and Peter's just like, "Okay, here's the movie," and that's just consistent opening credit sequences. But we're padding this out too much here. Let's get to this movie, Yours, Mine, and Ours. And you know, like I said, it's basically the same movie as the 1968 film with the same name. When you have Frank Beardsley, played by Dennis Quaid, a widower of 8 children, running into a high school sweetheart, played by Rene Russo, it's as if 30 years have never passed. Helen, also a widow with 10 kids of her own, that include the 6 she and her husband adopted, feels the attraction as well. It's no wonder why they rush into marriage without telling their kids. True love can conquer all, right? Unfortunately for Frank and Helen, the families don't mesh quite as easily as the newlyweds had hoped. They probably should have seen the culture clash coming. The disciplined Beardleys run through things by the book. For the energetic and vivacious Norse, there is no book. And you can pretty much tell chaos and hilarity is about to ensue. I'm not reading the rest of this synopsis by the studio, because this is clearly something that the studio wrote in general here, but there's really not much more to digest in this one, because honestly, it's nothing but a ripoff of Cheaper by the Dozen, a bad ripoff of Cheaper by the Dozen. Like I said, they tried to one-up Cheaper by the Dozen by having this come out before the sequel came out, which is the much better movie, but that's not really saying a whole lot, because that movie is definitely a lesser film than the first film was. But that's how desperate Paramount was back in the day. And this was back when Paramount was going remake crazy with it, just remaking as many catalog titles as they can. They had Alfie the year before, The Stepford Wives, we had this year War of the Worlds, Last Holiday, Bad News Bears, The Honeymooners, Longest Yard, you name it. I mean, anything that was coming out, that came out within the last 40, 50 years from Paramount, they were taking everything and just remaking it for a modern generation. Some of that ended up being good, others not so much. But yeah, for some reason, Paramount was just so obsessed with remaking every single classic movie from their library. And this is definitely one of those examples here. And this movie was nothing like its 1968 counterpart. This is just basically a bad 2000 family comedy that just plasters the title Yours, Mine, and Ours in order to make a quick buck off of it. And you even see it in the trailer. Stuff you would see in other comedies, really bad comedies. You know, I didn't even show you the full trailer where, like, you know, he's talking to, where Dennis Quaid's talking to his corporal, played by David Koechner, and, you know, he's talking about, I fell in love with this girl, I spent all night Googling her, and the guy's like, geez, Frank, you Googled a chick? And Frank's just like, what if it was, what does that mean? And David Koechner's like, probably something dirty. It's just like, why? Just why? But then you realize that the director of this is Raja Gosnell, you know, the same director who completely pillaged and destroyed everything that was good about Scooby-Doo, and also will do the same thing in a couple years from now with the Smurfs. But, yeah, not much more to say about this movie, honestly. It was obviously made to cash in on the Cheaper by the Dozen remake that was released 2 years prior, and to get it out before the sequel came out. Yeah, it's a remake of the 1968 film in name, but this remake did nothing to distance itself from just being a Cheaper by the Dozen knockoff, and it's pretty lame in the process. It's been years, honestly, since I've seen the original Yours, Mine, and Ours, and I don't even remember liking it that much to begin with, so that's another thing that Cheaper by the Dozen has over this movie in particular. At least the remake that also came after this was at least something better than this. I mean, it wasn't great, but I would rather watch that 2022 remake with Zach Braff and Gabrielle Union again than watch this lazy retread of an original, of a lackluster film in Yours, Mine, and Ours. And so much for the Rene Russo comeback effort. You know, she had 2 for the Money the month before, and now this movie, yeah, you can pretty much see why that comeback didn't work out so well for her. But, so that is Yours, Mine, and Ours. Let's go ahead and move on to the next movie. Chris Columbus, the director of Home Alone, got a new movie out for the holiday season. You know, he had the 2 Harry Potter movies come out around this time of year. Can he find that success again by taking a Broadway musical hit in Rent and making it into a movie? Let's find out.
There are times when we're dirt broke and hungry and freezing, and I ask myself, why the hell am I still living here?
Hi, it's Mom.
And then they call.
525,600 minutes.
What's supposed to getting together tonight? Would you like to come with me?
In daylight, in sunsets, in midnight.
In one extraordinary year, 8 strangers became a family.
You always said how lucky you were that we were all friends. But it was us, baby. We were the lucky ones.
Revolution Studios presents the music, the passion, the movie.
I knew we hit it off the moment we met.
Rent, rated PG-13, in movie theaters November 23rd.
525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year in the life? I don't know. This is not that good of a movie, unfortunately. Based off the Broadway musical of the same name, it features 6 of the 8 original Broadway cast members reprising their lead roles, depicting the lives of several bohemians and their struggles with sexuality, drugs, paying their rent, and life under the shadow of AIDS in the gritty East Village of New York City from 1989 to 1990. And, you know, that whole idea of AIDS in general has been such a joke about this movie in general. Like, the year before, we had Team America World Police, and, I think you remember this little ditty right here.
Everyone has AIDS. AIDS.
Yeah, that was pretty much them just saying that everything about this movie in particular. But you got a really good cast in here. Like I said before, 6 of the 8 original actors are in this movie. The 2 new additions are Rosario Dawson, who replaces the original Mimi, Daphne Rubens Vega, who was actually pregnant at the time of the film's casting and filming, and Joanne, who's played here by Tracy Thoms, who was originally played by Freddie Walker, who had been the oldest of the main cast when the stage production premiered in 1996, and she stated that she was not offered the film due to her age, but did request that the producers cast an actress of African descent for the film. But most of the other cast in the movie is in here. You have Anthony Rapp, Adam Pascal, Jesse L. Martin, Adina Menzel. This is one of her big breakout roles for her after her work with Wicked in general. Taye Diggs, Wilson Geraint, Heredia, And those songs in particular, I think, really gave me an idea that there's a possibility I could enjoy this movie. I thought the songs were pretty catchy, especially that song in the trailer. Like, I thought that was a really good song in general. And some of the songs in here are pretty good. There are brief flashes of promise in general with the film in general, but the story really is where the film really kind of falls apart. I mean, the movie, this is written by a good writer too, Stephen Chbosky, who wrote a really great movie, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, with Emma Watson, that came out in 2012. But then you realize he's also the same guy that directed Wonder and also the infamous Dear Evan Hansen, which that movie is an abomination. Dear Evan Hansen, just the play and the movie alone, the whole idea of that is really, really terrible. But this, I can at least see what Rent was trying to do. I got what they were trying to accomplish here. It's not a bad movie. It's just a movie that probably works better as a stage show, and it doesn't really do a good job of really bringing this into a movie landscape in general. And I feel like you needed to do that. You needed to go bigger, go grander, more epic. You needed to do something like we saw recently with stuff like West Side Story and In the Heights. Like, you need to be on a movie set here instead of just doing a simple, smaller movie that looks like it's on a stage play. Like we want to go see this on a stage play, we'll just go watch the Broadway musical on a stage being played out. But, like I said, it's not a bad movie, but just a movie that I feel like could have been so much more. The cast overall is really good. I think everybody in here does a very good job here. Rosario Dawson, Taye Diggs, Jesse L. Martin, Idina Menzel, Anthony Rapp, Tracy Thomas. I think they all do a very good job filling these characters very well. I think these are indeed very interesting characters that you want to get behind, but the movie, unfortunately, really does not have enough there in terms of substance to really give this movie the edge that I think it really deserves. The style overall is also a big problem too. Like I said, the visual look of the film, it really does feel like you're literally watching it on a stage. Now, if it was something like Hamilton, where it's a show that's impossible to get into, even if you try your hardest to get tickets, like the one that they put on Disney Plus, which probably was originally set to go to theaters, that would be something that would be really interesting to see on a big screen, because that's a show I've been wanting to see for a long time, and I've never been able to get to see it, but until I saw the Disney Plus version, which is really good, and was actually my favorite movie of 2020, but then again, of course, 2020 was COVID year, and, yeah, not really that much of a stretch there, but here, yeah, like I said, it's not a bad movie, but just a film that you feel like should have been so much more. Especially with a director like Chris Columbus, you know. This is a guy who just made 2 Harry Potter movies. Like, he was able to work with a bigger budget on that film in general. But we're starting to get to see Chris Columbus's somewhat downfall as a filmmaker as a whole, you know. There was a time that when Chris Columbus made a movie, you got excited for it because he had made a lot of really solid films. Smaller movies like Adventures in Babysitting, you know, Home Alone, which is a Christmas classic, and its sequel, Home Alone 2. Underrated stuff like Only the Lonely, Mrs. Doubtfire is a classic movie. You know, Bicentennial Man has a lot of ambitions too, and of course the 2 Harry Potter movies. But then after this, it just kind of goes downhill from there. I Love You, Beth Cooper is a film that I liked at first, but I'm not going to lie and say it's a good movie but nowadays, but we'll eventually get to that one. Percy Jackson and the Olympians is a kind of a lackluster film. Pixels is a terrible movie. The only thing I really liked from him in general was The Christmas Chronicles 2, which was a movie that he directed, where he wasn't the director on the first movie, but those movies in particular are very fun for Netflix productions in general. I mean, this guy has a lot of talent to his name, you know. Not only the stuff he does in terms of movies he's directed, he's produced a lot of classics. You know, he did produce Prisoner of Azkaban, he produced the Night of the Museum movies, Jingle All the Way, wrote a bunch of classic movies you're familiar with, Gremlins, Goonies, criminally underrated gems like Young Sherlock Holmes. He even made a television show in the 80s, Galaxy High, which is surprisingly really, really good. It's one of those shows that was produced by TMS, the company that did Tiny Toons and Animaniacs in the 90s. Like, he's done a lot of great stuff that is well worth checking out and definitely is well recommended. So that's why a movie like this, you just feel like you expect so much more because of what this guy's done in the past, but it just felt like he was lackluster in this case, and it really does hurt the movie in the long run. And there's good ideas and a good cast and good music that could have made this a really good musical, but as it is, I kind of put this in the same category as something like The Greatest Showman. The Greatest Showman has a great soundtrack and a really good cast that can make it work as a whole and great singing all around. But the story is really terrible. It's a really generic story when you really look at it, but everything else about that movie is well done. also the visual perspective I think is much better than anything in this movie. But it really, a lot of similarities to Rent and The Greatest Showman definitely come into play in this case. But yeah, I was not a big fan of this movie, unfortunately. And it really was a letdown for me, especially after seeing the trailers and seeing who was attached to it. I did expect so much more from it, unfortunately, but I didn't get it. But so with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is the romantic comedy Just Friends.
Chris Brander only wanted one girl.
I love you. Like a brother.
For sure. Now, 10 years later.
I can put my arms around you.
And 100 pounds lighter.
You'll always be fat to me.
He's trying to get Jamie.
I'm trying to look for my soulmate.
To see him in a whole new way.
Chris, you're gonna be fine.
Just Friends.
Raise your hand if your brother's a loser.
Short plot, Ryan Reynolds is simply this guy.
Oh no! I'm in the friend zone!
Longer plot, follows a formerly obese high school student played by Ryan Reynolds who attempts to free himself from the friend zone after reconnecting with his best friend played by Andy Smart, with whom he's in love with while visiting his hometown for Christmas. And the person that he's trying to upstage is Oz from American Pie. I finally figured out who the name of Chris Klein's character was. And Ryan Reynolds is dating Anna Faris in this movie. It was like a punk rock star in general. Well, she's like a rock star. I can't remember if she was a punk rock star or not, but this is written by Adam Tex Davis, who gave us such movies as his Swing Break Lawyer, which everyone remembers that movie, right? Monster Island. Yeah, that's probably not a good sign going forward. But this is directed by Roger Kumble, who has had certainly a very interesting stretch of films in general. Like, he started off with Cool Intentions, which was an intriguing film on its own merits, and then he did the sequel for DVD. And his last movie was The Bizarre, The Sweetest Thing, which is still one of the most insane R-rated comedies I've ever seen. But other than that, though, yeah, everything that this guy has done has not been that great in general, and sad to say, this is another one of those examples of a movie that really does feel like it should have been a whole lot better than it actually was. I mean, when I saw it back in the day, I did like it because I did feel like I was in the friend zone with several girls back then, and I probably still am. But I've come around to just accepting it in general. But in this case, I mean, there's nothing really all that hilarious about the movie in general. I mean, I expect so much more with the talent that they have in here. This was still Ryan Reynolds after Van Wilder. Nobody really kind of knew what to do with him in general, and it would take him a while before he would eventually become the Ryan Reynolds that we know him now, the Deadpool character that we've come to know and love from him, and why he's now become such a big superstar in terms of movies that he's made. But you feel like there's so much more that can be done with this film in general, but the film never really takes full advantage of what it could really be. It just feels like it's strictly staying true to the PG-13 rating in general that it has here, and just doesn't want to go too above what it should be like, and just go for the safe and marketable comedy. So I think a movie like this definitely does not need to go down that path. I feel like there should be so much more to it, and it just doesn't work as well as I think they wanted it to. I feel like there could be so much more done with this storyline in general. But as it is, it's just kind of like, it's not a bad movie, but just not a fully realized film in general. There's some things about it that do work in terms of some of the comedy. I thought got some good laughs, especially from Ryan Reynolds. But everything else, though, it goes pretty much exactly what you think of when you think of a rom-com like this. Yeah, it's one I remember liking back in the day, but now that I've seen it almost 20 years later, I realize that, yeah, probably wasn't worth it in the long run. So yeah, that's Just Friends. So let's go ahead and get to a movie that I really do like. This is probably overall my favorite movie of the entire weekend. A criminally underrated Harold Ramis film starring John Cusack and Billy Bob Thornton. This is The Ice Harvest. Stop! I just realized I gave you that build-up for a movie that I'm supposed to get to after that, because I forgot the movie that came after that part. That's actually listed before The Ice Harvest on this list, which I think is a damn shame, but I wanted to stop myself before I actually got into the review and realized, oh shit, I made a big mistake. No, before we get to The Ice Harvest, though, let's get to a lesser movie that came out this weekend, and much lesser than Just Friends, certainly. It's Usher making his feature film debut in The Mix.
From DJ to hero in one shot.
You saved my life.
Daryl's not a bodyguard.
He is now. Who's the new guy?
Some of the family I got stuck with.
I wouldn't mind getting stuck with that.
Usher in The Mix. Rated PG-13. Invaders of the
course, this is Usher making his big leading film debut after becoming the big breakout music star around this time. And in this movie, he plays a successful DJ who manages to rescue a powerful mobster played by Chaz Momentary one night. And in order to repay him, the mobster gives him the task of protecting his daughter, played by Emmanuel Shariki. And I was really in love with Emmanuel Shariki in 2005. I watched Entourage when it was first coming on, and I first saw her in that show, and it was just like, I instantly fell in love with this girl because, I mean, she was very charismatic, charming. She was very cute. I mean, she's very beautiful. I mean, she's a very beautiful actress. I've seen her in a lot of stuff I really like in general, so I was kind of excited to see this movie. Plus, this is directed by Ron Underwood, who also did RoboCop. Not RoboCop. What the hell am I thinking of? Definitely not RoboCop, but he's made a lot of good movies in the past. Tremors, City Slickers, Heart and Souls, criminally underrated film in general. But then he also did stuff like The Adventures of Pluto Nash. And this was one of his first big theatrical releases since then, and I realized we might be in some trouble here. And sure enough, as I watched the film, yeah, this is not 1990s Ron Underwood. This is the Ron Underwood that's literally calling studios up saying, "Do you have anything for me? I'll take whatever money I can get." And the studios and Lionsgate says, "We have this movie with Usher. Give me it. Give me it. I don't care how much it is. I'll do it." And yeah. This is the end result we get from it. A film that is just so lackluster, so mediocre, so unfunny, and it just doesn't work all around here. It's a really bad movie, and it's not because of the acting. The acting overall, I think, is fine. I think Usher does a very good job handling a leading role like this. I do buy into his chemistry with Emmanuel Shariki. I think Chaz Momentary can be very fun in here, too. You also have Kevin Hart in here, Robert Costanzo, Robert Davi. There is some good talent involved in here, but it's the script. It's the script. It's the comedy. It's just everything about it that just really kind of pushes off the good stuff that was working towards the film, from the cast in general, and from an idea that has some charm to it. Like has a good possibility of what could work in terms of a story like this. But the film itself just really is kind of lackluster. It just gives you kind of everything you expect in here. You can tell that nobody else was really putting into effort with the script in general, and everyone who read the script tried their best to make it do what they had, and it just didn't work in the long run. And it's a shame too, because there is possibilities for what could work here with the talent that they have on board here, but this is, like I said, it's not the same Ron Underwood that was giving us really good movies in the early 90s. This is the Ron Underwood that was literally taking anything he could get, including TV movie adaptations. Like he did, The Year Without a Santa Claus TV movie for NBC that came out the next year, which that's a mess on its own levels. And maybe we'll get to it on this show if I remember for the 2006 leftovers, because I know I won't remember because it won't be on the box office mojo list. But as far as this film goes, yeah. It's about what you expect from this director around this time period, in a film that probably should have been so much better with a better director and a better writer. But as it is, it just doesn't work. So now that that's out of the way, let's finally get to the Ice Harvest. Okay, let's get to the Ice Harvest.
Charlie just stole $2 million.
He looks like the cat that swallowed the canary.
But between the partner he can't trust,
Don't go squirrely over there. Stick to the plan.
Don't talk the woman he can't resist,
Is he a rich child?
the friend he can't avoid, and the mobster he's trying to escape. Anybody but a lawyer would consider the consequences of getting out of town will be slippery.
Going somewhere, Mr. Argus?
The Ice Harvest, rated R.
I absolutely love this movie. This is probably one of the most underrated movies I have ever seen, because nobody probably even knows what the hell this movie is. It really literally came and went. It didn't even make $10 million at the box office. And it was actually the last film ever released by Focus Features that was released on VHS, because, of course, we were phasing out the VHS around that time to put the focus more on DVD. In fact, around this time, Revenge of the Sith did not even get a proper VHS release. That's the last Star Wars movie that we thought we were going to get at the time. But in this movie, larceny, lust, and lethal behavior. In Iceborne, Wichita, Kansas, it's Christmas Eve, and this year, Charlie Arkless, played by John Cusack, just might have something to celebrate. Charlie, an attorney for the sleazy businesses of Wichita, and his unsavory assistant, the steely Vic Kavanaugh, played by Billy Bob Thornton, have just successfully embezzled $2 million from Kansas City boss Bill Gerard, played by Randy Quaid. But the real price for Charlie is the stunning Renata, played by Connie Nielsen, who runs the Sweet Cage Strip Club. Charlie hopes to slip out of town with Renata, but as daylight fades and the ice storm whirls, everyone from Charlie's drinking buddy Pete Van Houten, played by Oliver Platt, to the local police begin to wonder just what exactly is in Charlie's Christmas stocking, and the 12 hours of Christmas Eve are filled with surprises. this is a really good movie, and probably a film that you would never expect from a director like Harold Ramis, who's made great comedies in the past. You know, Groundhog Day is one of my all-time favorite movies. You know, National Lampoon's Vacation, Caddyshack, Stewart Saves His Family, Multiplicity, Analyze This, Bedazzled. This was his last great gem as a director as a whole, and it's really hard not to see why if you watch the film. John Cusack and Billy Bob Thornton are absolutely terrific in this movie. Probably one of my favorite roles in the film is Oliver Platt, who has so many great memorable lines as this drunk buddy of John Cusack's, who marries his ex-wife, and he invites him over to Platt's character invites him over to his house on Christmas Eve for dinner, and he's coming there drunk and all that. All the family is there, and he's yelling at his dad, and it's just just so many great lines out of there. Unfortunately, I can't find most of those lines in general because clips of this movie are very hard to find on YouTube. And unfortunately, I can't. I would have to go and find my DVD and Blu-ray copy of it, which I probably could have done. But there's just so many great moments in this movie in general. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't find the clip I wanted to show you where it's a dinner scene. But Oliver Platt has this great line reading during this dinner scene where he's got food in his mouth and he's just bad mouthing his dad, and at the end of it, he just goes "hypocritical bitch!" The way he says this line. Like I've always said, if you can say a line and make me laugh out loud, you've won me over. But there's a lot of great scenes like this. There's a great scene where there's a scene where Billy Bob Thornton and John Cusack, they have this guy inside of this carrier case, and he's stuck inside of there, and he's able to shoot a gun through the case in general, and the guy's just "Is that you, Arglist?" And John Cusack's just "Hi, Roy," and the guy's name's Roy, and Roy's just "When I get out of here, I'm going to kill you. You know that, right?" And Billy Bob Thornton's basically telling him, "You're not getting out of there, pal." And then Roy's just going to Charlie's just "Let me out, Arglist. I'm your only hope." And Charlie's just "Actually, Roy, you just said you'd kill me a little bit ago." And then it just stops, and then Roy's just "I didn't mean it." And that whole exchange is so well done. It's so brilliantly funny. This movie's also not afraid to get dark, too. I mean, it's a dark comedy in a comedic thriller in a very fun way in general, and you really don't know how everything's going to turn out when it's all said and done. I never read the book this was based off. This is based off of a book of the same name, but it's a movie that I just absolutely love. I love this movie so much. It's a criminally underrated Harold Ramis film. Definitely a film that I feel deserves a lot more attention than it ever gets, because it's, like I said, it's a movie that is really hard to find clips for it online, and it wasn't a big hit, so there really isn't that much of a demand for it to be released anywhere, except if you find it quickly on Blu-ray and DVD, because when I saw this movie go on Blu-ray for the first time, I immediately leapt at the chance to have it added in my collection. I mean, I love this movie so much, I had to have it in my collection, and yeah, I can't recommend this one enough. Definitely seek out The Ice Harvest. It's a criminally underrated film. Definitely one of Harold Ramis' last great works as a director as a whole. Because after this, his last film he would ever do as a director was the infamously bad Year One. But this is a masterpiece of movie. This is a criminally underrated film. I love this movie so much. I can't recommend it enough. The Ice Harvest. Definitely check it out. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our last movie that we have here. And that is George Clooney starring in Syriana.
Resource in history. It's running out, and 90% of what's left is in the Middle East. This is a fight to the death.
From the Academy Award-winning filmmakers of Traffic, they want to kill someone that isn't anything wrong. Take the target out. This is about our interests in the region.
It's like somebody put a giant ATM on our front lawn.
On December 9th, they will fight tough. They'll fight dirty. What is the price of oil? Syriana, rated R, starts December 9th.
The movie is essentially a politically charged epic about the state of the oil industry in the hands of those personally involved in and affected by it. I'm just reading the smaller synopsis of this because there's a novel for the actual synopsis that's on the IMDb page. But you get the idea of that here. It's basically Traffic, except this time around the focus is not on the focus on this is the whole idea of media houses, lobbyists, lawyers, politicians. The storylines in this movie are basically centering around the events of, what was going on in the Middle East. You have George Clooney leading an all-star ensemble cast that includes Matt Damon, Jeffrey Wright, Chris Cooper, William Hurt, Tim Blake Nelson, Amanda Peet, Christopher Plummer. Just a really phenomenal cast in here. This is directed by the screenwriter who did Traffic. Traffic was the Best Picture winner of It was not the Best Picture winner in 2000, but Steven Soderbergh won an Oscar for directing that movie. It was a great movie, by the way. It was a film I do really like a lot. I actually prefer that a lot more than I did the real Best Picture winner that year, Gladiator. But this movie won some Oscars, too, specifically for George Clooney, who got his first Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, one of several Oscars he was nominated for, because he also directed Good Night and Good Luck. Definitely the much better movie in general, but this is overall a really good film in general. It's a top political thriller with a strong cast, a really investing storyline here that has a lot of influence even in today's world in general, and just a really, really entertaining film all the way through. A really great film. If you like political thrillers, this is definitely one that's right up your alley. Can't say much more about this one that hasn't already been said. Syriana is a great movie.